Today we're going to be taking a look at the Pentti Synthetic Longsword Trainer by Heart Armory. Hello and welcome to the Ludus Ferozia YouTube channel. Today we're taking a look at one of the most affordable ways to get into longsword fighting through HEMA, and that is with a synthetic trainer, specifically the... I have to find it. I don't know where it went. Where did it go? Great start to the first video, right? But just a little bit about us before we get started. My name is Kevin, but most people call me Kai. I'm good going by either. I'm an instructor with a small historical combat club called Ludus Ferozia. We started it about a year ago, a little bit before the pandemic actually hit us. I, of course, study various HEMA disciplines such as longsword, arming sword, and the messer fighting. Another spoiler alert, we're probably going to do a review on this Pentti trainer as well. Our club also has an archery instructor. It's not me because I am not that good, but we teach historical archery as well, and he's amazing at that. But we don't focus just on historical European martial arts. We also instruct traditional Japanese martial arts such as kenjutsu. As you can see, I have a niaito and a katana there. And that's actually where I got my start in fencing, was kenjutsu. And I've been a kenjutsu-ka for 21 years, and I've also been an instructor in karate and jiu-jitsu and various other martial arts systems. You might also find me on YouTube under Applied Defense Concepts because I am a tactical firearms instructor and combatives instructor as well. But I just have a love for historical combat. I think one of the reasons why I have such a unique perspective in fencing is I came from the traditional Japanese kenjutsu background. So I was one of those people that would argue the superiority of this to the ends of the earth and not be able to provide a shred of evidence because I knew nothing about training with a longsword. But about 3.5 years ago, I decided to pick it up and start learning it. And of course, I enjoy it quite a bit, enough that now I teach it. And I was able to open my mind to understanding the history of this weapon, what it was used for, and how effective it was. Now, getting into longsword fighting, you have 3 main options for your trainer. You have the traditional wood, you have what is called a fetter or a tournament sparring sword. These are steel, made out of steel, and they're designed to flex to be safe in the thrust. And of course, you have synthetic trainers like the Pentti Longsword. So why would you choose something like this over, say, something like this that surely has to replicate a real sword better? There's a few reasons. The dimensions of the synthetic trainer is of course going to be larger than your actual longsword because you don't want this to cut into anything, and you don't want all of that force concentrated on a single edge, no matter what material it's made out of. So the squared off sides is what makes actual cutting very safe with this, actual cutting techniques very safe with this. The pommel and the quillons are probably the most dangerous part of this entire sword. So would I recommend you actually bashing people in the face with either one? No, because this has the weight probably of a real pommel, and these quillons, while they're not sharp, they certainly can dent up your masks and probably cause some injury if you're hitting with them. But the blade itself is very flexible. It's squared off on the end. See, hopefully it's not too close. Squared off on the end and on the sides. Heart Armory also has a service that they can customize the nylon cord wrap. So this one belongs to one of our students, and she chose red. And then I have one of course over here. That's a black and blue. It looks black just because their threads are so dark. And you can alternate and create crazy patterns as well. So if you guys are into customization, they got you covered with that. The crossguard is held in by 2 roll pins right there. And I didn't know how well they would hold up. They are pretty big, but I didn't know how well they would hold up when I first got one of these. But I have never seen one come out. I haven't even seen one come loose. The most I've felt is with the very first longsword that we purchased, this one. And it wobbles just slightly. That's probably just from a tiny bit of warp on the actual hole through the nylon. but it's still really solid. Like, it's not jiggling or anything like that. I can just feel it. That's it. I can feel it with my fingers, but you can't see it visually. So this one has been through the most abuse. You can see the amount of marks that are on the metal quillons here. And of course, all of the times we've dropped it on the cement right there. And even some fray on these cords, because these cords are glued down. And after shifting grips from your thumbs up grip to your regular grip here or down here, and you're just moving your hand up and down, the cords are going to come loose after a while. That's just the wear and tear on the sword. I found out that hockey tape is the best way to repair those cords, and it feels very comfortable in the hand. I could cover this entire thing with hockey tape and it would probably feel great. So I recommend if you buy one of these to also just have some hockey cloth tape in your HEMA bag with it. With the synthetic longsword, you have a lot of the same features as the steel. It's still a very hefty weapon. The weight of the actual blade itself is of course going to be less because it isn't steel. However, synthetic blades, what makes them so useful for fencing is they flex, just like that. That allows you to thrust, because not all nylon will do that. If you just have one of those cold steel propylene swords, they are not going to flex, and they're actually pretty sharp at the end. If you try to stab somebody with that, they're going to feel it and it's going to hurt. These flex and return to true. They return straight. So that makes these very, very, very useful for actual longsword techniques. And if you guys didn't know this, most European longswords did have an amount of flex. It was nowhere near this much or even as much as the fetter, because these have to be made safe for sparring. Most European longswords, most longswords in general, had a spring temper to them. Now, like I said, we have had about 15 of these bought over the last year, and all of them have gone through a lot of abuse. None of them have failed. The nylon that they use is crazy strong because we hit these things pretty hard and there's really no divots or dents. So I don't know what kind of polymer this is, but it's really strong and it's probably going to last for a very long time. The fit and finish and quality control of almost all of them have been very, very good, except for one or two. We have had one come from Purple Heart Armory that the handle was not tapped far down enough, so when you screwed the pommel in, it would only go about that far. They were able to send a replacement to us, and then I believe we had one where some cord was loose, and they of course fixed that as well. So Purple Heart Armory will of course make sure that you get the product that you paid for, so I'm really happy with that, and they've been in contact with us throughout the process. I don't have a sharp longsword here to compare the two, but I do have the training fetter. So we're going to start with that.
The Pentti Longsword weighs a little over 2 pounds, which in comparison to a Purple Heart Armory fetter and an Albion Brescia Spadona sharp longsword, there's about a pound of difference. The average weight of historical longswords being from 2 pounds to 3.5 pounds. When sharp swords are pressed together, they tend to bind or stick. Synthetic trainers will not do this. To simulate blade stick, I use coarse grip tape and put it on the edges. I found that it was pretty effective in having the blades stop when pressed against one another. I will say that this only lasts for about one session, so you'll start seeing pieces come off and they may hit you in the eyes.
In terms of how this translates to you progressing to this and then eventually into cutting, I think that this is a very good start. And of course, you can't spar with live blades anyway, so you're going to have to go to this at some point. In terms of competition, there are competitions that are synthetic only, so you do not have to buy a steel fetter to actually start competing. I know as soon as the pandemic mess clears up, whenever that will be, we are going to also be holding a steel-only tournament and a synthetic-only tournament, because different people own different things, and some people just aren't in a financial place to buy all the equipment needed to use steel. And I feel like you will find that in most places where they will have divisions in tournaments that will be just synthetics and just steel. Synthetic longswords are cheaper than their steel counterparts. They can be anywhere from $100 to $400 cheaper. So starting out, if you don't have a large budget to work with, a synthetic trainer is going to be one of the best ways to go. HEMA and any other kind of weapon-based martial arts system can be very dangerous. Wearing the correct protective gear is going to allow you to keep training and having fun. These can break fingers. These can break much more than fingers. So you have to wear protective gear. The protective gear that is needed for tournaments and for safe sparring varies with the kind of trainer you buy. So let's look at the differences in the kind of armor that you're going to need for the two. Let's start with the steel longsword. So with a fetter, this is metal. Even though it flexes, it's still metal and it's pretty heavy. It's gonna be pretty close to an actual longsword weight, depending on the make and model. When this hits you, even though it is completely blunt and flat, this can easily break fingers. This can cause severe bruising, maybe break some bones on arms. This is dangerous. This is a very, very dangerous tool without protective gear. So to enter most tournaments using fetters, you're going to need specialized gloves. So these are the Spez Heavies, the lobster models. You can see how much plating is on these things. These are heavy gloves, and with them comes a heavy price tag. These are $200 just for these gloves. And you can see there's just lots of moving plates on them, but your thumb not breaking is worth this price. And these are pretty big gloves. They make smaller ones too that we'll do for a different video, but you absolutely need good quality gloves for steel longsword fighting. But $200 just for this. You're of course going to need a sparring helmet like this one. This can cost anywhere from $60, but it's going to go up to about $110 to $120 with this hood over it to protect the back of your head. So this is for all fencing. You need to protect your face and your eyes and your head. You're going to need shoulder and arm and elbow pads, which I don't have with me right now. And also probably some sort of padded greaves. That's going to cost even more. It's going to cost at least $200 for most of that. And of course, you're going to need body protection. And a jacket such as the Spez jacket is going to cost you about $200. Now, the steel longsword is not going to puncture you, but it can still injure you, even with the blunt force poking, I guess is what you would call it. So I recommend, and most tournaments require, that you have a sparring jacket. Now, if you are going full speed with synthetic longsword trainers, I still recommend wearing as much protective equipment as possible because you're still going to feel it. But you can get away with a lot less than the steel counterparts. In terms of gloves for synthetic fighting, most of our students use lacrosse gloves. These are a used pair, and I'm actually going to provide a link down in the description if you guys are looking for cheaper pairs of lacrosse gloves, because there's a lot of used ones around. But these Maverick Roam gloves are awesome. I haven't had any injuries in them, and we've done full force, fully committed strikes in these, and you feel them, but they aren't going to be broken fingers feel them. Yeah, unlike my Spez Heavies, these have a tremendous amount of dexterity. I can still feel all my fingers moving around the grip of the blade, which is great. But I would not ever recommend using these for steel fighting. You will get injured, I guarantee it. And of course, you will need the same helmet. You absolutely have to have head protection and eye protection because these will injure you if you do not. But if you guys are doing any kind of controlled fighting, gloves and a helmet will usually be enough. I usually will do t-shirt and shorts with sneakers and go at it with my students and my friends, and we've never had any injuries. I'd still recommend investing in a Spez jacket or something like it because the thrusts on bare skin or through a t-shirt still hurt. Are they going to go through you? Are they going to injure you severely? No, but you are going to feel them. With one of those fencing jackets, you can take those over and over throughout the day, and it's not going to stop you from training. Whereas if you take a really bad thrust to the sternum, you might be sitting out for a few more rounds. So long as you have the minimal protection, you can sword fight. You don't even have to know how to sword fight, and you can still have a great time with these. Now, expecting actual longsword nimbleness out of something that's kind of big and clunky like this is unrealistic. That's what something like this is for. This is just to get you started into the full contact sport of HEMA. Now, contrary to the opinion of katana fanboys worldwide, longswords are not heavy weapons in the first place. They're very nimble and very agile, and in the hands of somebody who trains with them is a fantastic fighting weapon. When you swing a Pentti longsword, you can feel a little bit of the flex. You can feel a tiny bit of it moving in the blade when you do a full force swing, but it's not so much that it's going to make you feel like you are no longer immersed in the training environment. When you are doing techniques that require you to go edge to edge, so long as you are edge to edge, the weapon isn't going to flex. It doesn't flex hitting this way. If you hit with the flat for some reason, if you are trying to get them to glide off, or if you accidentally just have bad edge alignment, you will feel the flex in the blade. One of the major downsides to using a synthetic longsword, though, is in the heat. If you leave this in your car on a hot day or any really, really hot place, it is going to warp, especially if there's weight on either end, and there is on that end. Now, if that does happen, it's pretty easy to fix based on the instructions I've seen online. Using a blow dryer or probably a heat gun, as long as you're careful, you can probably bend it that way. When we have seen small sets just from use over and over, we just bend it over the knee or over the body, just like that, until it sets backwards, and it doesn't take much to do that. As an instructor, though, I think that these make a very, very fine beginner's tool, and I mean, I still use them and I still like them. They're affordable, they're pretty safe, and they give the feedback needed to become good at fencing. Now, Purple Heart Armory did not send us any of these. We purchased all of these out of pocket, so if there was something wrong with it, I would definitely let you guys know. But that about wraps it up for our review of their longsword. If you guys are interested in purchasing these, I will link Purple Heart Armory's website down below. They have different sizes, colors on the grip, and styles for the pommel as well. So whatever brings out your inner knight, go crazy with it. And if you are a fan of HEMA, sword fighting, samurai, historical combat of any kind, warhammer, spears, doesn't matter. Don't waste any more time. Pick up your longswords, flip it around, Mord how that like button, and be notified for the next one. Cheers.